Welcome to this episode of the Yahowah blog. It is the eve of Sukah here in 2025. Today is at sunset. We will begin our 8-day celebration of this opportunity to camp out with God. I know that it is called Sukkoth in those communities that are influenced by Judaism. And I realize that they are all fixated somehow in living in huts or in tents. But it is Sukah, according to Yahowah. And I think he ought to know, and we should follow his lead. And when you look up the root of the word, the actionable and verbal root of Sukah, it is Sukah. It is undeniable, the nature of this root. And it happens to be defined exactly the same way that Ganon is defined. And that's telling because Ganon is the verbal root of Gan, as in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. And the verbal root of both words means to be protected, to be sheltered, to be covered, and to be walled in the sense of a means to keep us safe from outside elements. You know, in Gan Eden, it was a walled community. The walls were not to keep the inhabitants in, Adam and Chawah. They were to keep the humans out that were active, being religious and political and vicious as human communities have been throughout the ages. The wall was there to protect God's people from all of those who were so vicious outside of the garden. And in this case, the commonality with this walled community, now that wall really is the entire earth. God's going to protect our planet from harm. He's going to cover us. And covering is a really interesting metaphor for both Gan and for Sukah, in that when the children of Israel, not the children of Israel, but Adam and Chawah, forerunners of the children of Israel, when the Gan Eden, the earth was covered by water vapor. And therefore, you had a much milder climate. Lives could be so much longer lived because you didn't have the harmful direct rays of the sun, and the temperature was much more temperate. But it is that covering which was so protective. And God is offering a different kind of covering as we move into the 1,000-year celebration of the conditions experienced during Eden. And we re-enter them on Sukah 8 years from now, 2033, which is year 6,000. Yeah. So that story of what happened in Eden is so important to us because we have to filter out all of those who do not belong, as well as encourage all of those who could make that experience richer for everyone. And we have to do all of that over the next 8 years. And so it's important to know that going forward, God's going to envelop the covenant family in his light. It will be the ultimate covering, protecting us from all harm. When I accepted this job 24 years ago, I was promised, as delivered through his beloved son, Dode, in the 91st Mizmor or Psalm, was to provide a shield of Malach, thousands of them, to make sure that no harm came to me or to my family, so that we could accomplish this job. So God has lots of means to protect us, and he's going to do so. And as we grow in the covenant and we become enriched and empowered and we move beyond these three dimensions and physical bodies into our soul being enveloped in spiritual energy and light, then we will need a pretty extraordinary protection, because just imagine what's out there as you were to travel through the universe to protect our souls. We have one of the great examples of how powerful this protection can be, because we were told that Dod's soul had the benefit of Yahweh's Ruach spirit come upon it when he was 8 years old. And we were told that spirit never left him and would never leave him. And so when we recognize that Dod, after fulfilling Pesach, where he sacrificed his Bashar body for that purpose in 33 CE, year 4000 Yah, the next day he fulfilled Chag Matzah, where his soul carried our guilt into Sheol to deposit it there so it would never be seen again, making us look innocent in Yahweh's eyes, so that we could be comfortable with him, exposed to him, a delight to him, and work with him. But imagine that now. Dod's soul was exposed to the enormous pressures of what is equivalent to a black hole. That's the nature of Sheol. It is a place where there is total darkness, total separation, and where there is only one functional dimension, time, and where nothing escapes. And yet, Dod's soul was able to enter and exit Sheol and be protected while he was there for that 24 hours, because of the protective capacity of the Ruach of Yahweh. And this is what is being offered ultimately to everyone, is to have that kind and that level of protection. I have it now 7 times over with the 7 spirits of Yahweh, so I know something of what I speak in this case. All right, so where we ended our discussion yesterday and the preamble to Sukah, and we're going to have 2 today. This one, which will begin where we concluded, which was after a really interesting review of what Sukah and Sukkoth all mean, as we investigated what happened with Yahweh's initial pronouncement of what we are to do on this day, when the day is celebrated, being the 15th day of the 7th month. That puts rabbis, and of course, in a whole world of hurt, because they pretend that this is their first month, but it's not. It is the 15th day of the 7th month, according to Yahweh. So we're told when Sukah will occur each year and how we are to observe it. And then, so that we had an understanding of the terms, we examined what could be known about Yaakov on this day. And when Yaakov was in Sukah, Sukkoth as it was called then, and he built his Sukah, what we found is that he lived in a Bayeth home, while the Sukah was simply for his possessions. And then we turned to the Yatzah, the Exodus, which followed, and we learned a great deal from that story, because what we discovered is that while Pesach provided an extension on life, freedom from the corrupting nature of religion and politics didn't occur until Matzah. Matzah is the day that our souls are unyeasted of the fungus and this corruption that enables us to enter God's presence and to be comfortable with him. That occurred on Matzah, not on Passover. And matzah is not an ingredient during a 7-day celebration of Passover. One of the things we learned is that there are 3 times each year that we appear before Yahweh, which makes Chag Matzah a 3-day celebration of the 3 Miqra over a 7-day period. And then Shabuah, independent and set apart by itself. And then the 3 fall feasts all are one event. It's Chag Sukah, making Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukah. One 23-day celebration, really, from God's perspective. One event. And so we learned a great deal about the process of what transpired during the Exodus. And the single most important lesson in their journey to Sukkoth was that this matzah, which is when it took place, is the essential part of this. That, first of all, you cannot and should never participate in Passover until you have accepted and met the 5 conditions of the covenant. And then matzah becomes this time of cleansing, of unyeasting our souls of religion and politics. So that's where we are so far. And what I promise is that we're going to take now a journey into Yahowah𐤄𐤅, because Yahowah𐤄𤅅 has such a marvelous presentation on what Sukah represents. So his prophetic journey begins with a very bold declaration that is, well, difficult for most people to comprehend today, because he provides such an apt description of what Israel has been and remains under the rabbis. I posted probably another 10 rabbinical dunderhead videos today on my Facebook page. It's almost impossible to imagine rabbis being more divergent from Yahweh's instructions. Everything they say is wrong. Israel, so long as you believe them, so long as you are anywhere near them, so long as your soul is corrupted, is yeasted by them, you have no chance of ever knowing Yahweh. They are literally poison for you. They are toxic. They are a plague on the Jewish people. And so while the rabbis continue to poison Jews, there will be no return of Yahweh. He will only return when you embrace his name, reject Judaism, and start listening to him after 3,450 years of ignoring him. And so the great impediment to a reconciliation between Yisrael and Yahweh is religion. And yet in the midst of this plague is when Sukah is best understood, because it is only when the final traces of religiosity are purged from Yisrael that God's people can be whole again. So let's begin in the beginning. This is the revealing communication of Yahowah𐤄𤅅. Freedom and salvation are from Yahweh. It is a compound of Yasha, the Hebrew word to deliver, to save, to free, to emancipate, and Yahweh's name, Yahu, Yahowah𐤄𤅅. Freedom and salvation are from Yahweh. Son of Amos, which means trustworthy and steadfast, whereby beneficially he compiled and revealed a written prophetic record of the covenant and this relationship concerning Yahudah, the beloved of Yah. That is also a compound name. It is comprised of Yahweh's name, obviously, and Dod's, Yahud, the beloved of Yah, and Jerusalem, another compound name, this one 3 times. It is the source of teaching and guidance regarding reconciliation. Doing so in the days of Uzziah. Uz is like Oz in Hebrew, written the same way. It speaks of boldness, empowerment, ability. And in this case, it is also Yahu. So it is the sense of empowerment and strength that we can draw from Yahweh. Yotham, which means that Yahweh is perfect. Akaz, which means that he has grasped hold, and Yahowah𐤄𐤄𐤅, which is rendered Hezekiah, but it means he is strengthened by Yahweh. And the prophet says in Yeshaya 1:1 that they were rulers of Yehudah, the beloved of Yah. So listen, spiritual realm, those of you who are on the earth, and choose of your own accord to pay attention and respond, material realm, because Yahweh has spoken, not only in the spiritual realm and in the material realm as well, because Yahweh has made his declaration. It ends, and this is God speaking to us. I reared my children, I lifted them up, I helped them grow while enabling them to be great. And I raised them, taking them to a higher place. But they rebelled against me. It's heartbreaking, isn't it? The creator God of this universe that has been so kind to us chose a group of people that would be the descendants of Abraham and Sarah through Jacob, through Yishak, and then through Jacob. And he did everything he could to raise them, to give them this wonderful covenant relationship whereby they could transcend this mortal existence and become immortal, perfect, empowered, enriched, adopted into God's eternal family, emancipated even from 3 dimensions into the 6 dimensions of the universe and 7 as we enter Shamayim. But rather than appreciating what God was offering through this covenant, they have constantly chosen to be religious. And in this way, Israel has continually rebelled against God. Yeshaya, Isaiah 1:2. I think this, ladies and gentlemen, encapsulates the history of Israel and the interactions between God and humanity as succinctly as is possible. Yahweh made the effort to engage with us, to raise us as a family. He tried with Adam and with Chawah. He tried again with Noah and his family. Then upon their leaving Babylon, Yahweh tried again with Abraham and with Sarah, then with Yishak, then with Jacob, and then with his 12 sons, over and over again, teaching, guiding, enabling, and yet consistently, God has been rejected. And the more Israel grew, the more they rejected God, the more they became religious. Now, this next statement is one that you really don't have a full appreciation of until you know the players in God's story. It actually reads that a bull, not a cow, a bull. And the bull is described here as an observant bull. This is someone whom Yahweh has been able to share his message, one who is so compassionate that he is willing to lay down his life for God's people. This is a very important symbolic reference because it is ultimately the bull that unifies Yisrael with Yahweh in the end. So a bull, an observant bull, one who looks, sees what is around him, just as the word itself implies, viewing the world from the proper perspective, becomes aware of and recognizes his creator, the one who made it possible for him to be born. But an ass, a stubborn domestic beast of burden. He just knows his Lord. Do you know who the Lord is? Satan, the adversary. Yahweh wants to be our father. Satan wants to lord over creation. When you speak of the Lord in religion, you are addressing Satan. When Jews sing about Adonai, they're singing about the adversary. The Lord Jesus Christ, that would be Satan. The rabbi or Lord in the Quran and throughout Islam, Satan as well. It's the bull who knows his creator because he's observant. The donkey, the jackass, knows his Lord. Israel, individuals who struggle and fight with God, does not know and remains unaware. And that is true to this very moment. When I listen to the rabbis and their posts in social media trying to describe Judaism and the Talmud and the Zohar, it is just vomitalicious. It is nothing but utter rubbish. It is, as God would call it, and I'll use the term that he likes to use, is bullshit. It's excrement. It's feces. Rabbis are repulsive. Jews, I can't emphasize this enough. They have led you astray. They have destroyed your relationship with God. While you believe them, you will have no relationship with God, and there is no hope for your soul. If you promote them, then you're going to Sheol with them. They're money-grubbing, lying, egomaniacs. Israel, these individuals who struggle and fight with God, do not know, and they remain unaware. My people have failed to consider this connection, and thus do not understand. Yahowah𐤄𐤅 1:3. That is Israel's plight. In the book of Hosea, God says it because my people are ignorant, because they do not understand, they are destroyed. And Israel has been ransacked for the better part of 3,000 years. It's all because of your ignorance regarding God. Woe to an errant and blameworthy nation, acting more like Gentiles than Jews. In fact, that's really our goal. We want to transform non-religious, unpolitical Jews back into Yehudim. If we can make you the beloved of Yah again, through evidence and reason, then we will have done our job. Because now you are nothing but an errant and blameworthy nation acting like Gentiles. As a matter of fact, you're proud of the fact that you have Muslims living among you and that you have a growth in the Christian population. And yet, what did God tell you about that? Don't do it. What did God tell you about being religious? Don't do it. What did God tell you about trusting in political leaders? Don't do it. Don't follow in the ways of the Goyim, and yet you've done all of these things. And yet you pretend like you got this relationship with a Hashem and a G-D and an Adonai who told you not to do all of these things. What happened when Adam and Chava in the garden did what God told them not to do? They were booted out. They were told, you're got to fend for yourself. And they ultimately died. What about you, Israel? Why would you expect any different? Woe to an errant and blameworthy nation acting like Gentiles, severely stubborn, heavily laden, dulled and unresponsive. with the corruptions and guilt associated with perverted distortions, the offspring of errant children who corrupt and destroy, lacking integrity. They have rejected and abandoned Yahweh. You know, this Isaiah scroll is available in its entirety, and it's one of many Isaiah scrolls, but one of these you've got plastered all over a museum just for its purpose, just to show it. You can go in there and read it. And for you to think that somehow being religious unites you with God when you won't even say his name, it's mind-boggling. Why can't you process what God just said? He just said, woe to you. You're wrong. You're blameworthy. You're acting like Gentiles, not like Yehudim. You even go under the notion that you're somehow Jews. There's no correlation between Jew and God. None. So long as you refer to yourself as Jews, you've got no clue who you are. You've got no connection with Yahweh. You're stubborn. You're laden with guilt. You're dulled. You're unresponsive. Your corruptions and guilt associated with your perverted distortions have led your children astray. You have no integrity. And as a result, you have been rejected and abandoned by Yahweh. That is where you are. My job is to change that so you're no longer there. My job is to relate this to you so you know where you are currently and you leave that terrible place and you come back to Yahweh. What have you got to lose? Death? A trip to hell? Being confused, being distorted, being misled? What do you have to lose? I mean, your political leaders allowed 710 to happen. Did nothing. They went a full day without responding. They knew all about it. They did nothing to stop it. I mean, when you consider how hellacious that attack was and that there was full disclosure that it was going to happen, and you still have the same government? You're out of your mind? I predicted Alaska flood a year before it occurred, saying that Muslims would enter small communities within Israel, terrorize the people while the rockets were shot for cover. And what I have discerned is that the entire purpose of the October 7th Alaska flood attack was to achieve one thing. It wasn't how many Jews they could kill. It wasn't how many they could abduct. It wasn't how many they could rape. It wasn't how many times they could scream Allahu Akbar. It was one purpose, and you fell for it. That purpose was to tick Jews off to the point that they knew that Israel would invade and destroy Gaza. And they already had all the resources around the world poised to capitalize on that. They were screaming genocide. They were screaming free Palestine. They were screaming from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, even before the IDF responded. They played you. They knew what you would do because you always do the same thing and it's always wrong. They invaded during October 7th for a single purpose, and that was to get Israel to invade and destroy Gaza so that they could destroy Israel, because they knew that if Israel went into Gaza, where there were 2 million Muslims, and began bombing it to smithereens, that the entire world would turn against Israel. And they would isolate Israel, and they would demand that Israel give these terrorists a state of their own, carved right out of the heart of Israel. and that when that happened, Israel would be indefensible. Perhaps they know more about what Isaiah wrote in this regard than do Jews, because you don't much like Isaiah, because he lambasts you for your religion. But it is in Isaiah in the 17th chapter where we're told exactly what's going to happen and when it's going to happen, and that your heart will be torn out and you'll become indefensible to these Muslims because of what you did and didn't do. And the fact that you've never acknowledged who your enemy is. You go off and you're attacking a symptom. You're pretending that Hamas can be eliminated from Gaza, not recognizing that Hamas are just simply good Muslims and that Gaza is filled with Muslims. You can no more eradicate Hamas from Gaza than the man on the moon. Can't be done. Man on the moon, that's kind of an interesting phrase now that we know what the moon represents and who the man is that represents the moon. You were played. And then you were played by Trump. And being played by Trump's embarrassing. I mean, he may be the only one with a IQ below that of the Muslims that played you on 10-7. 7-10, to use your nomenclature. He gave you the bombs to destroy yourself. And you did. And because Netanyahu has to have a war to stay in power, he is now beginning to realize that he can't continue to bomb Gaza. The world's not going to allow him. Trump's not going to allow him. And so the war is over in Gaza. Hamas won. Hamas remains in power. You'll get your 20 living hostages back, and it will put 7 million Jewish lives in jeopardy. Got to be the dumbest trade in the history of trades. IDF will withdraw from Gaza. The Muslims won. Just a reality. Oh, you say, but that's not winning. Look at Gaza. We annihilated the place. That's exactly what they wanted you to do. You got played. You're just stupid. Now Netanyahu wants to have a war with Iran again. He won't survive that. And we know this because Israel is just now 7 months from entering the time of Israel's troubles. It's 7 years. 2 out of every 3 Jews are going to die. It's the worst time, according to the prophets, in the history of this planet. And you're entering it because you brought it on yourself. Yahweh's not going to have anything to do with you until you return to him, and you won't return to him until your backs are up against the wall. You are corrupt. You are destroying yourselves. You lack integrity. Between your politicians and the rabbis, they have left you astray. My mission is to speak to those who are not rabbinical, certainly not the Haredim. They're not going to listen anyway, and not the progressives who are acting more like Marxists who lost the ability to think rationally. Have nothing to do with Yahweh anyway. You got to take the 20 to 25% off from both sides, and now you got a 50% that's down the middle, and you have to remove from that 50% those who are right-wing wackos who are in love with the Donald, who's the Antichrist. He's the great betrayer, who are still in love with Likud and believe that Netanyahu didn't destroy Israel, that he's there saving Israel. Got to get rid of all of them. Is that another 25%? So that leaves 25% of Israel that is possibly receptive to Yahweh's message. So we're speaking to you. The only way off this blue rock alive, or to enter the time where God restores it to Eden, you'll have to shed all allegiance with religion and politics. You can do it now. You can do it later. If you survive to later, which most of you won't. We have come to despise and actually revile, genuinely feeling contempt for the set-apart one of Israel, Yahweh. Comprised of individuals who engage and endure with God, we are no longer that. We have become strangers, alienating ourselves, having gone backward in the wrong direction. This is the most prolific of all the prophets. His name is Yahowah𐤄𤅅. Deliverance is from Yahweh. You have the entire scroll dating back 2,400 years ago. You can read it without all of the rabbinical corruptions. I'm sharing it with you in that way. And for you to pretend that God likes the religious, that Judaism is somehow associated with God, that their God-forsaken Talmud is a oral Torah, when Yahowah𐤄𤅅 is just flat out lambasting you. He's condemning everything about the religious nature of Jews, saying that you're unfaithful, you're estranged from God, he has nothing to do with you, he finds you repulsive. That's just the truth. You got to deal with it. That's what the prophet said. And he's not alone, because every one of the prophets had exactly the same story. In fact, it's exactly the same story in the Torah. The Torah, particularly the Exodus, is nothing but this constant chaos where you were obnoxious towards Yahweh. You were obnoxious to Moshe. And then later, when God's son is anointed as the Messiah and king, you were obnoxious to him. You rebelled against him. You've done nothing but rebel against Yahweh and those he has chosen to speak through. Every moment, with just flashes of brief sanity among the delusions, Israel, you've been bad. I mean, really, really bad. Disgusting, revolting. And you may not like to hear that. You may say, oh, well, most guy must be anti-Semite. He's speaking against Jews. I'm telling you what God has to say about you, and it isn't pretty. You've corrupted yourselves through your religion, through your politics, by erasing Yahweh's name, by not listening to, in fact, revolting against those God has chosen to speak to you, including Yahowah𐤄𤅅. How often is it that you hear Yahowah𐤄𝐿 quoted in your midst? Or anything. The story of the adulterous woman in Numbers 5. This story of your rebellion against Moshe to the point that he said, I'm out of here. I can't do this anymore. I don't want any part of you. In Numbers 11, Numbers 12, where Miriam said with Aaron, we too speak for God, and said, no, the hell you don't. Somebody speaks for me, I've designated them. Guess who he didn't designate? Rabbis. And then you've got 13, 14, and 15, the story of the spies, where you finally get a chance to go into the promised land and they come back with nothing but gripes and lies. Of the entire group, there's only 2 people that actually stood up for God. Caleb is the most extraordinary of them. And God says, oh, that's your attitude? The hell with you. You can all die. See if I care. There'll be 2 of you that get to go into the promised land. All the rest of you, if you're over 20 years old, you've reached an age where you should be able to know better, you're dead. Just as he said to those who made the golden calf, you're dead. The earth's going to swallow you. You have the tragedy that follows that of the waters of Meribah. What a disgusting episode. It's just one horrible event after another. You know, stop dressing the Torah up like she's a whore and kissing it, and start paying attention to what it says, because it says when Jews are religious, God is not to be found. That you're spitting in God's face when you're religious. You're going backwards in the wrong direction. The prophet says, Yahowah𐤄𝐿 says, for what reason? Actually, I'm not communicating that accurately. This is Yahweh speaking through Yahowah𐤄𝐿. Yahweh says, for what reason? And on whose account do you want to be continually afflicted and destroyed over and over again, adding to your obstinate and hostile rebellion? The entire head is impaired and diseased. The entire heart, and thus your ability to exercise good judgment, is cramped and infirmed. Yeshayah, Isaiah 1:5. He's talking to all of you. And he's not talking about, somebody did a bad thing, boy, they ate something they shouldn't have eaten. No, there's no mention of that. Oh, no. What this is talking about is the colossum, the entire nature of Israel. This is the entire community of Yehudim becoming Jews. He says, all of you collectively, as a people, you've lost the ability to think. You've lost the capacity to exercise good judgment. As an entire people, you are in rebellion. You have chosen the path of affliction and destruction over and over again, and you remain obstinate and hostile and in rebellion. How in the world are you going to enjoy Sukah, which is a return to the garden, when you are estranged from God and therefore you're on opposite sides of that wall? You are walled out. You're building yourself a hut, an imagined place to pretend that you have some affinity with an unknown God, and God is saying, no, you're destroyed, you're afflicted, you're obstinate, you're hostile, you're in rebellion. Your entire thinking process is diseased. Your ability to exercise judgment is cramped and infirmed. From the sole of your foot all the way to the top of your hair, there is nothing that is healthy or sound. He is speaking to the entirety of what Israel represents. There's only one thing that is capable of infecting a people to this extent, from toe to hair, from mind to heart: religion. The enemy of the Jewish people has been and continues to be Judaism. It is the infirmity. Emasculated and castrated, battered and bruised, wounded by a devastating and deadly plague, they are rotten to the core, as they have not been cleansed or medicated. They have not been bandaged. They've not been soothed with olive oil. You're an open wound, Israel. And it's about to burst. Your land is going to become essentially lifeless and ruined. Your cities and towns will be consumed by fire. Conspicuously in your presence, your soil will be devoured and destroyed by illegitimate, unauthorized, and foreign foes, the most nauseating of whores. It's happened many times. It happened during the Assyrians. It happened by the Babylonians. It happened by the Greeks. It happened by the Romans. It happened by the Roman Catholics. It happened by the first Muslims. It happened by the Ottomans. It happened by the Catholics again. Over and over again. Then it happened by the Muslims. And it happened by the British. And now it will happen by the Muslims again. You see, Alaska 2.0 is not going to be like a pinprick. Yes, I know, 1,200 dead and 250 hostages and the rapes and the carnage. We're a lot more than a pinprick from Israel's point of view, but Alaska flood, according to the prophets, the next rendition, which will take place within just over a year's time. It's going to be 1,000 times worse. 1,000 times worse. Your cities and towns will be consumed by fire. Why? Because there will be vastly more rockets and drones shot than Israel can defend by 200, 300, 400 fold. All of Israel's vaulted defenses will be overwhelmed. Your cities and towns are going to be consumed by fire. All of them, not some of them. And there'll be no means to put out the fires because they will also destroy all of the infrastructure. In your presence, your soil will be devoured by illegitimate, unauthorized foreign foes who are nauseating whores. The Muslims are going to flood into Israel, as they did on October 7th, except for every one of those Muslims, there'll be 1,000. Imagine. They will bring devastating perversity. Oh. Devastating perversity. You got a taste of it 2 years ago. On this day, 2 years ago. They will bring devastating perversity. Now you might say, why are you reading Yahowah𐤄𐤄𤉅 when we're trying to celebrate Sukah, for crying out loud? Because Yahowah𐤄𐤄𝐅 gets there. Because you have to understand that right now, Sukah is this giant wall, like the wall around the garden, and you're on the outside. And the only way that this works out for you, and that wall and doors open up for you, is you to understand how rotten you are relative to God, because you still are religious and you still are mired in religious customs. So until you shed your religiosity, you're on the outside. My mission is to get you on the inside, and I can't get you on the inside until you realize what God thinks of you, what he thinks of Judaism. And so it is essential that you understand this if we're going to get you into the inside. I'm already there. It's not going to make any difference to me if you listen or not, except I work for Yahweh and it makes a difference to him. I work for Dode, who is your returning king, and it makes a difference to him. So it makes a difference to me. And it's the hardest job that anyone has ever been given. Moshe couldn't do it, and they just don't come any better than Moshe. Dode couldn't do it, and Dode is the very son of God, his chosen one. And yet you rebelled against him. He couldn't get it done. And then for 3,000 years, no one has listened. You've just been a mess, just this diseased disaster. No one spoke to you and told you these things for 3,000 years. Well, certainly 2,500 of them, with the last of the prophets being Malachi. Since him, total silence. And so now here we are. My job is to wake you up. My job is to get you to come clean, to walk away from religion, to not be overtly political, to get you to be at least receptive to Yahweh before it is too late. Otherwise, you're not just on outside of that wall. Everything that's outside of what God is protecting is going to be destroyed. Your land will become lifeless and ruined, your cities and towns consumed by fire. Conspicuously in your presence, your soil will be devoured and destroyed by illegitimate, unauthorized, and foreign foes. He's speaking of Muslims. They will bring devastating perversity and adversarial transformation, similar to being overthrown by estranged adversaries. Doesn't get any worse than Islam. And one of the reasons God's so upset with you, you know why Islam exists? I have written 5 volumes. They're 825 pages apiece. 5 volumes in this goddamn religion series, presenting the entirety of the Quran, reordered chronologically, and put into the context of Muhammad's life using the 4 hadith collections that were contemporaneous with the Quran, that were provided by the same people who provided the Quran to us, particularly Ishaq and Tabari, Bukhari and Muslim. And by doing that, I learned something that is really undeniable, and the evidence it cannot be swept under the rug. Islam exists. October 7th happened because rabbis sold Talmud readings to Muhammad. They made a buck selling Talmud readings to Muhammad that Muhammad then twisted to serve his agenda and attributed to Allah, creating the Quran. Without those Talmud stories, the Quran is a little pamphlet that no one would even bother to have read or listened to. Muhammad is unknown. Islam never would have survived Muhammad's death. It is only because the rabbis gave the Quran a veneer of religiosity by selling Talmud stories to Muhammad that Islam exists today, and Islam is the greatest enemy not only of humankind, but particularly of Jews. The genocide against Jews perpetrated by Muslims began after Muhammad was embarrassed by those rabbis who mocked him for claiming that their Talmud stories came from Allah. They created this mess. And it wasn't the first time. Without the rabbinic training of Paul, who was the first to actually call himself a rabbi, New Testament doesn't exist. The first 14 books of the Christian New Testament were all written by Paul, a rabbi, claimed to be the best of the rabbis, who used the argumentative nature of the rabbis to misquote Yahweh, to twist what he said, to take it out of context, and to deduce the absolute opposite meaning. Christianity exists because the rabbis equipped Paul to create it. And then, once it was created, rather than oppose it by quoting from Yahweh and say, no, there cannot be a Jesus, an Iesu Christou, all of these statements belong to Dowd. All of them. Dowd is the Messiah, the returning and former king, the chosen one, the Son of God. Everything you're attributing to this myth of a man was actually accomplished by and spoken of regarding Dowd. But you didn't do that. And so all of the hell that has come upon Jews, including the Holocaust, be laid at the feet of those rabbis who made that horrible decision. They have been your worst enemy for a very long time, Israel. It's time you out them. It's time you spit in their face. It's time you told them to go away and to shut up. It's time that you isolated and quarantined the parasites of the Haredim. If you can't do that, Israel, then the carnage that you're going to suffer over these next 8 years is going to be horrific. You are nothing right now but estranged adversaries of God. But the daughter of Zion, the conspicuous signs posted along the way, will be preserved and left as a remnant. You know what that story is about? You know what this daughter of Zion, Zion means signs posted along the way, be the ridge line from Dod's home to Yahweh's home on Mount Moriah. His daughter is the adulterous woman. The adulterous woman isn't a woman who cheated on her husband sexually. The adulterous woman is a religious whore. She's the Gomer. She's the reason that Yahweh says, I'm divorcing Israel, after he told his prophet to marry a religious prostitute so that he could emphasize, so that you would understand that you are being separated from God because of your religiosity. This is this religious whore. This is the story of Numbers 5. Yahshua explained it to you. There will be an adulterous woman, Israel, that will be part of a remnant. And that remnant is going to be like the sheltered place for living, like the Sukah, like a covered and protected dwelling place to camp out. Do you know why that's the case, Israel? Because Chag Sukah is part of the celebration of Teruah, Kippurim, and Sukah. It will be fulfilled in the fall of 2033, which is year 6000 Yah. And on Teruah, on the Shabbat, there is going to be this sacrifice of the Adamah Parah for the express purpose of purging the religiosity from this remnant of Yisrael that God has gathered from all over the world. So that if you follow what is written in Numbers 19 about the Adamah Parah, and you apply that to Numbers 5 about this woman, in Numbers 5, you will know that this remnant is being prepared for the re-entry into the garden. Now you might say, well, why don't you just bring this up later, so we will know, because 2/3 of you are going to be dead between now and then. Why? Because there's a harvest between now and then, and I'd like you to be part of it. Because if we can get some 70 of you to respond in Israel and embrace Yahweh's name and return to his Torah, not the rabbinical Talmud, and to shed your religiosity and embrace the relationship as Yahweh instructed, then you can speak now boldly before the majority of Jews die. I don't want you to die. I want you to live. And so by telling this to you now, you can be part of the covenant and join us on the Shabuah harvest. You can later be part of the covenant and join us on the Teruah gleaning. Or you can be part of those who are left behind, this remnant. And if you're part of this remnant that is left behind, and you are able to benefit from my sacrifice as the Adamah Parah, then you will be readmitted into Sukah. You'll be prepared for Sukah. And in between that period, Teruah, which you call Yom Kippurim, and which you call Rosh Hashanah, and it isn't the beginning of the Babylonian New Year. Teruah is the day of the herald. If on Teruah you benefit from this, then this adulterous woman is going to go through that 7-day period of being set apart, followed by 3 days where she's all prettied up, as you were when during the Exodus on the base of Mount Choreb, you were prepared to listen to and to meet with Yahweh. This time, though, you can't screw it up. You can't tell God to go away and shut up. Not going to work this time. Didn't work last time, and you don't have any time for a redo. So you can't do that. So this is all getting you prepared so that you can come into the celebration of Sukah, because as this is transpiring, and you see Yahweh's going to light the flames as he did 2,888 years prior with Elia. Elia is going to be there. He's going to be the master of ceremonies. He's going to explain everything that's going on. To be copious amounts of water that are released from underneath the Temple Mount. That God's going to ignite the fire. There's going to be the sacrifice of the Yahowah𐤄𐤅 on Teruah, and it will purge the religiosity of that remnant. As God destroys all of those who have come against his people, destroys all traces of religion and politics around the world, and that he then transforms the entire planet back into the conditions of the Garden of Eden. And then in 10 days, Yahweh returns to a perfected earth, to his remnant of his people, the sheltered group of people who are preserved as the remnant. He's going to return to them with Dode, your Messiah, your King, my Messiah, my King. And then we're all going to be prepared to enter Sukah together. This is the story that Yahshua is telling you, and Yahweh is telling you through Yahshua. It's the reason we turn to this. And everything's going to be like a vineyard. The vineyard that Dode planted. Like an overnight cottage for a watchman. And a challenging garden that was once filled with vehemently difficult stubble. It's like an awakened encampment, akin to people who are now aroused. All preserved because there will be a group, finally, after all of this time, who are willing to be observant. Yahshua, Isaiah 1:8. All of this in the great Isaiah scroll, and we're still in the first chapter. Unless Yahweh of the host of spiritual messengers had not spared and preserved a remnant. On our behalf, as a few survivors, then like Sodom, we would have been. And approaching Amorah, we would have been likened and compared. Isaiah 1:9. Yahweh plays a major role during these last 23 days. The three individuals that he will work alongside and with, Elia is the goat, myself as the bull, Dode is the ram. And yet, God is not playing around this time. This is not casual time. This is not, let's give you lots of opportunity to think about it time. You will have Elia and I on the Temple Mount for 3.5 years with miraculous things happening all around us. Your last chance to come clean. And then come Teruah. All of the things that I have said will transpire, but what I have not shared with you, but I have shared on previous programs, is that there are 4 chariots, red, black, white, and dappled. And those 4 chariots have a role. I'm going to be in the red one because I am the man from Edom who is dressed in red. I am the sacrifice on this day. I'll be bludgeoned to death. In the role of the Yahowah𐤄𐤅 for the benefit of the adulterous woman. That's the red chariot. The black one, it's dressed to coordinate with those it's going to pick up. All of the Jews who are still religious and still wearing their ridiculous mourning suits. The destination of that chariot is hell, Sheol. You don't want to be on that. There then is a white chariot, and it's going to travel from sundown on Friday evening, the 23rd, or the 23rd of September of 2033, through the morning of the 24th, also a Shabbat, on Teruah, going to travel the entire world. It's going to pick up every soul that will be part of this remnant. God said if he hadn't spared this remnant, there wouldn't be any of you left. And he's going to bring that remnant in the white chariot into Jerusalem, all around the Temple Mount, so that you can benefit from the sacrifice of the animal parah, be purged by the flames, be washed by the water, purified by the ash. All of that is going to take place so that you're prepared to re-enter Sukah, the sheltered garden, the earth as it has been restored to the conditions of Eden. Had that not happened, it would have been lights out. The world itself would have no reason to exist. Those got no kingdom. Yahweh's got no people. There's nothing. There's no purpose in this planet. The entire planet would be like Sodom and Gomorrah. Destroyed. It's the same message that God gives in the conclusion of Malachi, my messenger, the last of the prophets in the last chapter. Had it not been for what we're accomplishing together and the fact that there are going to be this remnant, had God not acted in this way in support of our collaboration, the earth would be destroyed, as was Sodom and Gomorrah. Yahowah𐤄𐤅 is presenting what is going to occur. After the Shabuah harvest, it's going to be hell on earth for Israel. In fact, the gleaning on Shabuah, which will be the 11th of June, 2027, will be followed almost immediately by Alaska Flood 2.0 and this miserable condition that we have considered at this point. But the time of trouble ends on Teruah in 2033, the 24th of September that year. And that's when this remnant is spared. This is when we are prepared to re-enter the ultimate Sukah. This is why Gan and Sukah, from their verbal roots, have exactly the same meaning. The Sukah you're entering is Gan Eden, as the earth is restored to those conditions. The signs, these conspicuous signs posted along the way, they are the message that Yahweh has chosen to communicate to you in these words. Linking Dode at the bottom of Zion, that ridge line, and all that he represents with the Temple Mount and the home for Yahweh's name at the top. That's where it's all going to take place. The Sukah is our return to Eden. And so our mission is to awaken a remnant, a few survivors, and then to prepare them for Yahweh's return so that you can be on the right side of this great event. We will continue our presentation of all things explaining Sukah, even though we have now come to Yahowah's conclusion in terms of putting all of the religiosity aside, scrubbing the people clean of it, Yahweh providing a remnant so that there would not be a return to Sodom and Gomorrah, so that God's people can be purged. And all of that is as a result of knowing all of that is a result of everything that we have learned throughout the Torah, the prophets, and the Mizmor. And so when we return later today, we're going to turn to the 4th chapter of Yahowah𐤄𤅅. Yahowah𐤄���� is the guidebook to do the job that I am doing. He wrote the textbook on proper tutoring. He's the one who explained the purpose and the arrival of the man from Edom who saves many. He's the one who is prolific at denouncing the religiosity of Israel and the ultimate plan to save Israel. Sukah is the final destination. I want you to know about it because I would like you to be there. So I thank you for listening. We'll talk to you later as we continue to celebrate this great festival of our reunion with our Maker, Yahweh. Thank you.